All right, so I'm back for a follow-up on this Lightning Elite. Um, as you guys saw there, it started out great and very quickly turned to crap as far as opening, and it's only gotten worse. Basically, I'm lucky if I can get it to fire, 2 times in a row without it coming off track like that. So here's the deal. I typically don't call out specific vendors unless I'm really praising them on something, but I gotta say I bought this knife through perryknifeworks.com. First time I've ever ordered a knife through them, and I gotta say, guys, I would stay away from that website or from doing business with that dealer. Customer experience was not great with them. Now, to some degree, I can kind of cut a little bit of slack, I guess. Basically, they had this knife on sale for $25, right? And I paid about another $5 or $6 shipping for it to get shipped to me. So I paid about $30 for the knife, including shipping and tax and whatnot. It was a little over 30, maybe 35. So here's the problem with it. Obviously, you can see I had it for just a little while, and it stopped functioning almost right off the bat. So in my mind, it's a defective product, right? So I contacted Perry Knife Works, let them know that it wasn't deploying reliably, and that I wanted to either exchange it, which was my preference, or return it for a refund. Basically, it was hard to get more than a couple word answer out of them. They basically said that I could go ahead and return it. From what I could gather from the website and from what little bit of correspondence I got with them, was that they would, if I go for the refund, they would refund the price of the knife, but not the original shipping, which I kind of understand, but it would be shipping back to them at my cost. And that's where the issue comes in. You see, they shipped this to me using USPS. And they got away for about $5 doing that. The problem is, according to the Federal Switchblade Act, you cannot ship a switchblade through the U.S. Postal Service. You can do it through another carrier like UPS or FedEx or something like that, but it's illegal to ship it through USPS. I don't know how they're getting away with doing it, but I wasn't going to turn around and do the same thing knowing that it's illegal to do so. So my options were basically UPS or FedEx. Looking at the pricing for those to ship that back, it was like around $12 to ship this thing. And that's where my problem comes in. I spent $25 on the knife. I spent $5 to $6 on shipping that I already was not going to get back. If I spend another $12 to ship this thing in, I'm looking at about almost $18 in shipping that I'm out now for a $25 knife. And if they sent me a replacement and that one didn't work, I'd have to ship it back again, at which point I've more than paid the price of the knife again in shipping that I've lost, and I have nothing to show for it. So I thought it was a reasonable request to ask that they provide a shipping label since it was a defective product that they shipped me, and they basically ghosted me. They responded one time to one email, and as soon as I suggested, well, based on what it would cost me in shipping and the amount of money I'd be losing in shipping basically being the same as the price of the knife, like I said, they just ghosted me. I never heard from them again after that. So I won't be doing business with them again. I wouldn't recommend doing business with them again. Basically, I'm also, at this point, I have a hard time. I can't really recommend the knife. Now, that being said, I am going to go ahead, since I've got nothing to lose at this point, I am going to go ahead and tear it apart and see if I can figure out what's causing the misfires. So I'm going to go ahead and put some lubrication in there because I do know it seems like it's fairly dry. Possibly that's got something to do with it. I'm going to see if there's anything wrong with the spring, anything wrong with the machining that maybe is causing it to not, it retracts fine, but it does not deploy at all. Basically, you're lucky if you can get one out of every two. So I'm going to go ahead and take this thing apart. We're going to take a look at it, and we're just going to see and hope that if I maybe put some lubrication in there or do something else, that we can figure out something that'll make this thing start functioning reliably. I've had so many people comment to me, either directly on my channel or I've also seen it in other forums and chats, that these are supposed to be reliable knives. Not that they're good knives per se, they're still made out of cheap quality materials. But the one thing about them that people like is that they're reliable. And obviously that has not been the case so far in my experience. So I may have just gotten a lemon, or maybe there was bad QC, and once I open this thing up, I might be able to see or find something that would indicate why I'm having this issue. All right, so right off the bat, yeah, it is completely dry. There's no oil or lubrication of any kind in here. So that's one thing that I can remedy. Whether or not that's what's causing the problem, I don't know. Honestly, what it looks like to me, that spring right here, I don't know how well you can see it on the camera, but the way this thing functions and the way it works, you need this piece that's hanging out here to be able to grab onto that blade to fling it forward or back. And this piece right here is not engaging very well or staying over clipped over very well. It's almost like this one is, but this one wants to kind of hang back, and it's not giving it much of a lip there. That could be possibly part of that issue. If it is, unfortunately, I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to remedy that myself. Trying to get that thing, I could possibly try to bend it a little bit myself and see if I could get it at a better angle. But I mean, I noticed that it's clearly shorter than this one, and I'm assuming that's on purpose. But I think that might be part of what the problem is this thing's not gripping properly when the knife shoots forward, and it's causing it to come off track because it's not functioning the way it's supposed to. But I don't know. We'll see. As far as the rest of it looks, I mean, this spring here is out a little bit more than I would typically like to see it. Let me see if I can push that back in a little bit. Yeah, it's definitely sticking out quite a bit. I mean, it wasn't out, but definitely wasn't seated as deeply as this other one is. So these are the little stops that catch the knife as it goes and lock it in place as it goes back and forth. So I think what we're going to do, I have some room oil here. I don't know if lubrication's the problem. I don't know if it's the tolerances and the machining on that stop there, but we're going to go ahead and just put a little bit of rim oil on everything. And then we're going to put it all back together. We're going to see if that does anything at all. Get it past that first stop. Okay. And that needs to go there. Don't know that you really need oil on anything there, but we're going to go ahead, since we're oiling it all up, we're going to go ahead and do it. And now what I'm going to do, before I tighten everything back down, I'm going to go ahead and just alternate some of these screws enough to hold it in place. And we'll give it a test fire just to see what's going on and if it looks like it's made any difference at all. If it looks like it works, we'll put it all back together. If not, we can take it back apart and look a little closer. The one thing that I didn't look for that I meant to there, as I had it torn apart, was if there's any kind of burrs or anything in the machining that could be causing drag, causing it to not want to well, guys, I don't know. Maybe all it needed was lubrication. Maybe it was that spring. It actually kind of makes sense that it could have been that spring on that forward stop, because that's where it was causing a problem, is when you fired it, not when you retracted it. So that forward stop that locks it in place, if it wasn't catching the blade as the blade comes forward and locking it into place, then the blade was basically firing and then just rebounding on itself and not ever locking in the forward position. So it could have just been quite simply that spring was not seated deeply enough and was causing it to not lock in the open position reliably. It makes sense to me. I'm not an expert necessarily. I obviously am brand new to out the front knives, just started buying them here at the beginning of the year. So I don't have a lot of expertise on the subject. Honestly, as far as how they work, I only have kind of determined that just by looking at the inside of one when I tore it apart. So whether I'm 100% right on that or not, I don't know. But it makes sense to me. Now, what I will say that I said before when I first started this video is I am extremely impressed with just the overall feel of the build quality on this. Now, I'm not saying obviously there's an issue there. There's a QC issue or whatever if I was having all those problems with it firing right off the bat. But it feels like everything is fairly tight. Like there's very little blade play. For a $25, $30 out the front, that thing has like almost no blade play at all. So it is definitely very tight tolerances. If it was as simple as just that spring needing put in, or the blade itself and the mechanisms inside needing to be oiled, and if I get reliable function out of it from this point on, then I'm still pretty happy. Definitely, I'm very happy for that price point. But I will say, just having that happen to me within the first few minutes of owning the knife does kind of shake my confidence a little bit. Now, obviously, it's a $30 out the front, made out of cheap Chinese steel. I wasn't going to trust my life to it to begin with anyway. But to just carry it, to even carry it and know that if I needed to get a knife out just to cut something real quick, that I could reliably do that. If I doubted that it would reliably deploy, then I wouldn't even carry it. There's no point in carrying a knife if I can't deploy it. So if this fixes it, I'm probably going to fiddle with this thing over the next few days. Just kind of like a fidget toy, doing this. And if it doesn't fail within, several hundred fires, then I'll probably carry it. If it does start to fail again, maybe because it just gets a little too dry or that spring works itself back out again, I'm not going to be carrying the thing if I know that even if it's every 100 or so deployments, that thing's going to misfire. I just don't see the point. I have other knives that will reliably open every single time, whether it's an out the front. I have that Viper Tech. I've got a review up on that. That thing has never failed to deploy, and I've fired it a couple thousand times at this point. And it's never once misfired. So, carrying something like that over this makes sense to me. But it could have just been a fluke. It could have been too dry from the factory. That spring might not have been seated properly. And if I can fire this thing a couple hundred times here without any failures for it to deploy, then, I might change my mind on that. So I might have to update you guys either in the comments or maybe just upload a quick video with an update after I've had a chance to run this thing for a while and see if I have any more issues with it. But that seems to have fixed the problem right now. So if you do happen to, take a chance on one of these and pick one up and it has that same issue where it starts to misfire on you, there you go. We just kind of work through it together. Just tear it apart, make sure everything is seated properly, everything looks like it's in its proper place, throw some lubrication on it, and it should start to function again. So, all right, guys, hope you enjoyed it. All right, guys, I had my first failure to deploy after my little fix there. I wasn't counting, but I would say if I had to estimate, probably about 50 deployments in. And now, well, of course, now it's working, but I had about 4 or 5 failures. There it goes. Failures to deploy in a row, which made me think it was just going to keep doing it. Well, there it goes. So, another one. So whether it's the things already getting too dry, which I have a hard time seeing being the case. There it goes again. Now, from what happened the last time this happened, what I can say with fair amount of confidence, is that interval between when that misfires gets less and less the more you do it, and eventually gets to the point where basically you can get 2 or 3 in a row, or you might get at best every other one that it misfires, but it'll be misfiring as often as it's not. So it just gets worse from here. So I'm going to go ahead and take it apart one more time. The purpose of that is to see if maybe that spring has worked itself back out again. And if that is the case, I'm not really sure what I can do about it. Other than to say, buy these at your own risk, because you may get a good one, but you may get one that's crap. And I am starting to think that I got one that was crap. And so this might be a $30 paperweight. I will say that while it works, I do enjoy it. It fires very smoothly with authority. It's got good tight tolerances, no blade play. It's super light, feels good in the hand, but it is not reliable. And yep, you can see there that spring. I don't know if you guys can see that. The spring here, see how visible that spring is? It's almost worked its way all the way out. It's actually sticking out a little past the lip. You look back here at the backstop, you can't even see the spring. It's so deep in there. So this spring just keeps working its way back out. I don't know if the spring itself, there's an issue with it, if it's not tensioned properly. I can't really tell you that. I don't know what's causing it to work itself out, but I know that that's what's causing the problem. So if I can, I'm trying to see how deeply I can seat this thing. But as deep as I might be able to seat it, I'm not so sure it's not going to just work its way back out. And that feels like it's as deep down in there as I can get it. So I'm going to go ahead and put it back together. And my guess is it'll work real good for a little while. And then it's going to start misfiring. And I mean, if that's the case, nobody wants to sit here and tear their knife apart, you know, after they've fired it 50 times or whatever, every single time that you get to that point. That is not ideal by any means. But I'm going to go ahead and put it back together. Oh, helps if you get the right. Let's see, I lost my proper bit here. I believe it's this one, yeah. Go ahead and get it back together, and we'll see how it goes. I pretty fully anticipate that I'm going to encounter the same thing, whether it's 50 deployments down the road or 100 deployments down the road. At some point, this thing, that spring, is going to work out far enough again that it is going to cause problems. And the problem is, with a company like this, I can't even find who actually makes these. You know, there's some Chinese-made knife. There's not like a company that you can reach out to and ask for replacement parts or service. Basically, the retailers that sell them, the only thing I know you can do is try to return it if it gives you a problem, if they're willing to do that. But if any of you out there know where to go for a Lightning Elite, if you need repairs or something done, my guess is it's a $25 to $30 knife. They just figure you buy a new one. But the problem is, if the first one you got didn't work right off the bat, there's really nothing there to incentivize you to go out and spend another $30 on a knife where the first one didn't even work. So I will say that if I can't get this thing working reliably, which I have my doubts at this point, it will probably be the last Lightning Elite that I purchase. Because who wants to... Yeah, see? It looks like it's working reliably again. well, that was actually me. I messed up pulling back on the switch. So I can't blame that misfire on the knife, but yeah, my guess is I keep doing this, that'll eventually work itself to a point where it'll start to misfire again. I did sit there and basically deploy this thing in and out, like I said, probably about 50 times or so before it failed the last time. So I don't know that I'm going to sit here and keep doing that on the video to the point that I get to that failure. But I mean, that does prove what is causing the issue. It is definitely that spring in that stop pin that locks the blade in the forward lock position. It is working itself out enough that it's not putting enough pressure against that stop pin, so that when the blade passes the stop pin, what should happen is that spring should lock it. You know, as the blade passes it, it should push down and lock it into place so that the blade's locked in the forward position until you pull back on the switch, which then lifts that stop pin and allows the blade to go back and retract. That stop pin is not working because that spring is working itself out, and then there's not enough spring tension on the stop pin to get it to do what it needs to do. So that's what's causing my issue. Like I said, if anybody has one of these and you've ever had to get it fixed and you were able to find somewhere that you could reach out to and have them work on it, let me know. But again, part of the problem is going to be the knife's so cheap that the cost of shipping it in to get repairs, you could just buy another knife, more or less. So, you know, I guess that's a good thing and a bad thing. But then you're basically taking your chances every time you buy one that you'll get one that's going to be reliable. So I've heard of other people that have these things and have never had a problem with them. So maybe it's just my bad luck. What do you guys think? Anybody out there have experience? Go ahead and feel free to sound off in the comments.